Hi everyone and welcome to this video. Today we'll be making a casual chic long skirt. It isn't a very difficult project, neither do you need a lot of things to get started. It just takes a little time to finish. For this project you will need 1.5 meters of heavy sturdy fabric. I'm using suede, and you will need one button. And of course for the button, a button foot and a buttonhole foot. You can find and download the pattern for free on my blog. I will put the link in the description box below. When printing the pattern, set the scale to 100, so the pages will align better when you're taping it together. In the end, it should look like this little square when you're taping the pages together. Just cut the little pieces out and transfer it to your fabric. And then we can get started.
So first of all, we'll have to cut out our pattern pieces. I already placed mine on the fabric, and as you can see, I folded the side edges inward because the pieces which are laid upon these areas, so the rectangular piece and the back piece, are needed twice. And this way you cut double, so it's just less work and they're perfectly even. If you have a fabric with a pattern, you can't use this layout. You have to take it in account because the big front piece will be upside down. So you have to change it around if you have a fabric with a pattern. When you've pinned everything down, all the pattern pieces are secure, you're just gonna go ahead and cut it out. So now we have these 4 pieces. I'm gonna start with the one on the right, which are the back pieces. We are going to sew these 2 pieces together and also sew in the darts. So now that the pattern piece is still connected to the fabric, I'm gonna draw in where the darts are going to be. I didn't say this before, but I always cut out these places in patterns, so this is made way easier. Now flip the fabric over so the other back piece is showing. Note that this piece will be mirrored to the previous one, so you have to flip over the pattern piece as well. So the white side is facing upwards. Reconnect the fabric with the pattern. You can do this using pins and pinning it together, but as you can see, I'm just using some heavy items so the pattern piece cannot shift, and that will do as well. Go ahead and do the same as you did with the other piece. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and pin the 2 fabric pieces together. It's probably not even necessary because the fabric is not slippery at all, so it will probably do without, but I'm just doing it anyways to show you which line I'm gonna sew. So where you have to sew to connect these 2 pieces together. I'm gonna use a straight stitch to connect the 2 pieces together. My machine doesn't have a stitch length, so I'm just showing you which of the 3 options I'm gonna use. My machine does have a tension setting, and I'm just putting it at 2. That's the one I'm usually using. If I don't say anything about the tension, it's 2. So you know that for the further video and other videos. This pattern has a 1 centimeter seam allowance, which is about a little bit less than half an inch. I'm not using any markers usually, I'm just using the lines on my sewing machine. So I'm letting the right side of the fabric follow this line, which will provide a straight stitch. That's how I'm making sure my straight stitches are straight. So now I'm just gonna sew the whole piece. I'm guiding with my hands a lot and just stopping a little bit before it hits the pin, and then removing the pin and continuing. So as you can see, the edges are fringing a little bit, and to prevent it from fringing even more, I'm gonna cross stitch both the edges. So not together, we're gonna do it separately, otherwise the seam will look very bulky and weird on the back. So we're gonna cross stitch both the edges separately. And as you can see, it's not all the way to the right, it's a little bit in the middle, so the needle can go in the fabric when it goes to the left and outside the fabric on the right. So this way it will catch all the fringe and keep it together and prevent it from fringing even more. So now we're coming back to the darts. You're gonna fold the fabric so the triangle has a clear middle, and you're gonna use your pins to secure it together. Make sure your pins are following the white lines on both sides of the fold. So I'm starting at the bottom, as you can see. I'm just making sure my pins through both of the white lines. This way your dart will be how it should be. And so now for the sewing part of the darts, you're just gonna follow your pins, and then when you are at the bottom, you're gonna sew a little bit longer, but all the way to the side, all the way to the right on this example, because then it won't be so pointy. I don't know if you know what I mean, but sometimes when I'm sewing in darts, it just looks weird. And this was a trick I discovered, I don't know, 2 years ago, and I just live by it now. The darts look way better this way. So just trust me, follow your pins and then sew a little bit further along the side. Now we're moving on to these two pieces, which are the front pieces. As you can see, they have a very big seam allowance. That's because we're gonna blind hem the front pieces, like what will be on the front side of the skirt. And we're gonna sew in the darts as well. And we're gonna connect the two pieces to the back piece, which is now a one piece instead of two back pieces. The process of sewing in the darts will be exactly the same as before. The only thing is that we're gonna have to mirror the pieces from the start, not only one of the two pieces. So just flip over your fabric, flip over your pattern piece, and do exactly the same. Now we're going to iron the darts flat. It will make a huge difference, believe me. It will make them even less pointy using the iron and using the technique that with sewing a little bit further along the edge, so it's not too pointy and triangle-y. I'm also doing this for the back piece. Like to do it all together, it's more efficient. And I'm also ironing the seam open, the seam of the back piece. And please believe me when I say this makes a huge difference. In the beginning, I didn't do it as well because it was too much of a hassle, I thought. But just get your iron and your iron table, if I don't know if that's how it's called, probably. And just keep it with you along a project, ironing every seam open, ironing the darts. It makes a huge difference. So we're moving on to the blind hemming process. First of all, we have to mark where the fold should be, and I'm doing this by placing a little dot or a little stripe with my white chalk at 4 centimeters away from the edge. And to be clear, it's the inward edge, the one without the little curve, which will be for your butt. But I'm marking 4 centimeters away from the edge, or 1.6 inches, and I'm doing this alongside the whole edge, so it is clear where the line should be. So when you're done with tracing, marking where the fold should be, you're gonna flip over your fabric so the wrong side is facing upwards, and you're gonna iron the fold. So you're gonna fold the fabric till you see the white dot, which will be on the side where the fold should be, and you're gonna iron. And you're just gonna do that also along the whole edge. So you'll have a very crisp fold. So before we're going to actually sew the blind hem stitch, we're gonna cross stitch the edges so there won't be any fringing. We're just doing the same thing we did at the back piece. So now that we've cross-stitched the hem, we're going to continue on to the next step of the blind hem process, which is folding the fabric in a particular way. So here you can see the cross-stitched hem, and you can also see the ironed in fold that we've created beforehand. So just go ahead and flip it in. And then we're gonna fold the fold inward. It's a lot of fold. It will be fine. We're just gonna fold the fold inward while leaving half a centimeter to a centimeter of the fabric outside of the newly created fold. It's very difficult to explain in words and to understand in words, so I suggest you just look at the video a couple times. I also filmed it from a different angle, a little bit closer. And after you've done that, pin it down, or if you feel like you can even iron the newly created fold. I was probably just too lazy that day. I pinned it down. And when you've done that, we're gonna continue to the sewing part. We're gonna change the regular sewing foot for a blind stitch foot, and we are going to change the stitch settings to the blind stitch one. This is what mine looks like on my sewing machine. Now again, we're gonna have to place the fabric in a particular way. The cross-stitched hem will go underneath the wide extension, and the fold will be placed on top of the wide extension. It has like a little foot you can rest on. By using the blind stitch, the needle will go like 5 times, I don't know, a couple times onto the right side, so on the little cross-stitched part, like the end, and then every few stitches it just goes down, stitch, 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 and then it goes to the left one time, and then back a few stitches to the left one time. So it takes like little bites into the fold. That's the essential thing of the blind stitch. So you have to make sure the fold is not too close to the needle when it like takes a bite, when it skips one to the left, because then you will see a big piece of the thread. But you also don't want your fabric to be too far, because then the needle misses it, and then you have no stitch at all. So you have to like find the sweet spot, maybe practice it a couple times, really begin slowly. You can maybe use the hand knob instead of the foot pedal to sew in the beginning. You have to make sure the thread matches the color of the fabric, because you will see a little bit of the thread on the outside, like when you finish the hem. So this is what it looks like. This is the result. You can still definitely see the thread, so it's not completely a blind stitch, but that's very hard, I think. I mean, you probably need a more expensive sewing machine and better food and everything. But to be quite honest, I like it. It has its charm, you know? Okay, so now we're gonna assemble the skirt some more. We're gonna sew the front pieces to the back piece. And here you can just see me clipping them together so that they're well aligned. I know where to sew. You can also use pins, of course. After you're done with that, I'm gonna use a straight stitch to like sew the pieces together. And then the separate hems I'm gonna cross stitch again, just like I did before. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've sewn the front pieces to the back pieces, and we've cross stitched all the edges so there's no fringing. I'm gonna iron the seams open. And just like I said before, just do it. It will look way better in the end. You have no like bubbling and weird ruffles. It just looks better in the end. The final product will look better on you. So here I am just ironing everything open, blah 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 blah. Just like that. Okay, so the next part, the waistband, which is probably the hardest part. It looks so easy. You have 2 strips of fabric, but we have a lot to do with it. Okay, so you're gonna remove the paper. If you've cut already in the beginning, you've cut it along both sides, you can skip this little part. I didn't. I cut it on the fold. So I'm gonna iron the fold first, and this like created line will serve as my guiding line where to cut. So it's just easier that I don't have to use like the pen again and make little dots, measure everything. This is my like secret way of skipping all that. But of course, if you already cut it alongside the line in the beginning, it's probably even smarter. So we've done that. So now we have two pieces of fabric. Well, you probably already had two, but yeah, probably even better. But okay, we're gonna fold these pieces of fabric. So it is like a double bend. I know we're doing a lot of folding in this video, but oh well. We're ironing it also again, so the fold stays crisp, it is laying flat and perfect to work with. You do this for both pieces of fabric, but we're gonna set one of those aside for now, and we're gonna work with this one first. This one is going to receive the button, but before we are going to sew this onto the fabric, we're gonna fold the edge inward and we're just gonna hem it. I'm using a normal straight stitch, and by using the line on my sewing machine again, just like I did in the beginning, as a kind of guidance of where the fabric should be, where the fold should be in this case, just doing it like this. So now we can sew on the button. Well, first we have to determine where to sew it on. I'm just using some chalk and my measuring tape because I want the button to be in the middle of the fabric. The width of the waistband is 7 centimeters, but I have to take 1 centimeter off for seam allowance, so there's 6 centimeters left. Because I want it in the middle, that is free, so I'm just measuring free from the both sides, like the top side and the left side, making a little cross, so I know exactly where the middle of my button should be. Also, I didn't say this, but you have to change your foot again. Now turn it into the button foot, and I'm using a cross stitch on the button, and it changes. It's dependent on which button you have, like how far away the holes are from each other. So maybe it's the small one for you, maybe it's the biggest one for you, maybe it's the middle one. Just try it out for yourself. I'm always using like the handle, like to sew with my hand on the sewing machine instead of my foot, because it's way slower, and then I can see if it goes perfectly in the one hole and then the other hole, back and forth. After doing a few cross stitches, I'm gonna change the way the fabric is laying underneath the needle. So I'm just turning it 90 degrees, doing it again and again so that it has been in every hole, so to say. It sounds very weird, but so now that the button is on the waistband, you're gonna get the assembled skirt and pin the waistband onto the skirt. Not to sew it together again, but to determine how big of a piece of the waistband we can cut off. So pin the edge of the waistband to the edge of the skirt, and accordingly pin it further to where the seam is, which connects this front piece to the back piece. So that is very short, as you can see. Make sure to add like 1 centimeter more to the right in this example before you cut the fabric here. So you do have to cut the fabric. Then pin the rest of the waistband, so the right side, the other piece of fabric that is now created, onto the waistband further, also leaving 1 centimeter on the left side, so where the newly made cut is. We're gonna pin it further along the waistband until we meet the other seam, which connects the back piece to the other front piece. Make sure to add 1 centimeter again before you cut it along this seam. For now, we're just gonna set aside the skirt with the like pinned little pieces of waistband on it, because we're gonna work with the piece of waistband that we cut off, like at the end. I folded the piece of fabric inside out, and now I'm pinning along the line while creating a triangle at the end. We're just gonna sew along this created line, first with a straight stitch and then with a cross stitch. This time we're doing the cross stitch on the double fabric, so not separately. It will be together. You can go ahead and cut off the little triangle that we've just created. Now we're gonna flip this little piece of fabric inside out. As you can see, I'm just using my fingers. Just take a look at how I'm doing it. It's very white piece of fabric, like a white tube we created, so it's very easy to turn it inside out. When we've turned it inside out, I'm just gonna iron it again so it's nice and flat. Now we're gonna remove the other two pieces of the waistband from the skirt. So we have these three little pieces of waistband. And now we're gonna assemble these three together again. So we're gonna fold the big one open with the good size facing us. And we're gonna fold the little one with the button also open, but the other way around. So the bad side is facing us. Just pin it together until you meet the fold, and then you're gonna get the other piece we've just sewn and put it onto this unpinned piece of the fabric. I'm just gonna put it very close to the fold because the other side will be sewn together, will be sewn onto the skirt. Now that it's laying there nice and close to the fold, you're gonna fold over the little piece of the waistband that has the button and pin it together onto the two other pieces. So this side will have like 4 layers and the other side will only have 2. And we're just going to use a straight stitch as well as a cross stitch to sew these pieces together, so to make it look like this. Okay, so now that we've sewn these 3 pieces together and we have one piece again, we're gonna get the other piece that will be necessary for the waistband, which we've set aside at the beginning of like the new section of this video. And we are gonna sew it together again using the same straight stitch and cross stitch as we did for the other one. Facing the good sides together and sewing along this line. Okay, so now it is all sewn together again, and you're probably thinking we're done with this waistband. But no, we're not done. We're gonna sew in a buttonhole, and we're gonna cut off another part again, just like we did before, and turn it inside out as well. You're gonna get the skirt and wrap it around your waist in order to like determine how tight it's going to be around your waist. You're gonna put the little front piece on the inside and the big front piece on the outside, so it's easier to mark where the edge meets the fabric. Here you're just gonna put a little stripe, a little dot, whatever, a little line, just so you know where your buttonhole should be. That's why we're marking this area. Once again, we are going to pin the waistband to the skirt all the way to the end, and then after adding about 1 or 2 centimeters, we are going to cut the excess waistband. And now with this cut off fabric, we're gonna do exactly the same with the other piece that we cut off from the first part of the waistband segment. You're gonna fold it over, you're gonna pin it down, and you're gonna sew along the lines. And when you've sewn along these lines and you've created the little triangle, cut off the little triangle, you're gonna flip it inside out again. And once again, iron it flat. Now coming back to the rest of the pinned skirt / waistband, we are going to mark where the buttonhole should be. By flipping over the pinned waistband and searching for the drawn stripe, we are going to elongate this stripe onto the waistband. I'm making a cross, again just as I did with the button before. When you've done that, you're gonna remove it again from the skirt and you're just gonna pin it along the lines because this is the wrong side of where this is not the side where the buttonhole will be. It will be on the other side of the waistband. So by doing this, by like inserting these needles, these pins, you can flip it around, and as you can see, you have a perfect indication of where the middle of the buttonhole should be. So once again, we'll have to change our foot. This is the buttonhole foot. You also need the length, well, the width, it is the same, by the way, I think, of the button, and because that is the indication of how large your buttonhole should be. So for now, I just have the same button here. It's a duplicate. I'm just gonna push it inward, and then I see how large my buttonhole should be. So for me, it's 4 stripes. I will start the sewing of the buttonhole at the 4th stripe of the buttonhole foot. So just place your fabric underneath your foot, and please note that it is only on one side of the waistband, so it's not double. It's only on one side of the waistband. So as you can see, you see the fold, you see the left side of the waistband, which will not be sewn on. It is only on the side where the yellow, for me that is, for yellow indication is of the buttonhole. So we're gonna begin on the 4th line with this stitch settings. Then we're gonna turn it to these settings, which will create the right side of the buttonhole. The needle will come forward till the very end. Then we're gonna change to the same settings as beforehand again, so just to the side. And then we're gonna go lastly to these settings, which will make the left side of the buttonhole, and the needle will go backwards. Go all the way till you meet the 4th line, or just the first few stitches, which were side to side. Okay, so now we have created this buttonhole. Well, we all actually still need the hole, so we're gonna make that using my seam ripper. It's probably very bad for your seam ripper, but I don't really care. Other people probably use a scissors or something, but this is just easier. I'm just ripping it open using my seam ripper. Okay, so now we are gonna connect the flap onto the other side of the waistband. We're doing it in this manner. Just look very closely to what I'm doing. I'm placing the flap inwards, so the rest of the waistband will like hug it, to say. It is sewn into the waistband. You can't see the seam on the outside when it's sewn together. And we're using, once again, a straight stitch and a cross stitch to sew these pieces together. And that was actually it for the waistband. So well done if you're still here. We're now, for real, gonna sew the waistband onto the skirt. So lastly, we're gonna pin it together just along the whole way, and then we're gonna sew it together. Make sure the flap that is connected to the button part is not sewn into the skirt. Just leave it hanging. So this is what it looks like. I'm just going to cut off the excess fabric and the fringe and some of the thread. And then the very, very, very last part of this project is blind hemming the bottom of the skirt. So I already explained this technique before. I will show you once again, like in a higher tempo. You can maybe just skip through it as well if you've mastered it already. But first, we're folding the line on and ironing it flat. Then folding the fold over again and pinning it down, placing it correctly under the foot, over the foot, you know what I mean, and just sewing a beautiful blind hem stitch. This is what it looks like, and once again, I'm very happy with the result. I like it. You see the little red dots? I think it's cute. It has its charm. And well, boys and probably mostly girls, that was it for today. This is how it looks. I'm very, very pleased actually. It was more hassle than I thought at the beginning, but in my opinion, it was worth it. Make sure to check out my other videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.